Welcome to Murder Most Foul, a podcast devoted to exploring famous murder cases of our time. Some solved, some unsolved, but all fascinating and guaranteed to raise the hairs on the back of your neck. I'm your host, Jim Solanowski. Today's episode: The Karen Read Phenomenon. Arguably the most talked about story since that of O.J. Simpson is the Karen Read murder case of Massachusetts. Her saga dominated the local and national media for over 2 years, covered by Court TV, 2020, Dateline, and 48 Hours, just to name a few. There were documentaries galore and even a Lifetime original movie with real actors. Promotion for the Lifetime biopic celebrated the film with a description, quote, "Karen's story is one of resilience, integrity, and the growing movement of supporters rallying behind her," unquote. Today, we explore that movement of supporters that did more than just rally behind her. My guest today is Kay Marie, who, as an observer of the Karen Read phenomenon, faced often vicious pushback for daring to try to have civil debate. By the way, I say trials because Karen Read was tried twice. The first trial ending in a hung jury, and the second in acquittal for Ms. Read. But wait, there's more. As the quintessential gift that keeps on giving, there are currently 2 dueling civil lawsuits occurring in Massachusetts to keep us Read Junkies entertained throughout the entire summer. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Murder Most Foul. My guest today is Kay Marie, also known as Critical K, and we'll get into all the different names. So welcome, Kay.
Thank you for having me.
So today one of the things we're going to cover today is the Karen Read case. And some people might go, oh, not again. I've got at least 2 episodes, and of course they're all over the place. Especially here in the East. I'm in Rhode Island, so it was a big case here, and we're going to cover it a bit just so people know what we're talking about. But the bigger part of it that we want to talk about that transcends just that case, but was to me was the epitome of what we're going to talk about, is what you might say is the war of the groups, or the war of the supporters, people who believe the party in any case is guilty, the ones to believe they're innocent. And there's always that opinion out there with a case, especially a big one, and they get interviewed by 2020 and all that. But this case, Karen Read, and we'll tell you how if you haven't been aware of it, because I went up to the trial a couple of times. It's vicious, it's nasty, and it's dangerous. Mm-hmm. And we're going to point out a little bit about that and try to. I am not a psychiatrist. I don't play one on TV, and I didn't stay at a Holiday Inn last night. So I don't know what gets into these. I don't know what gets into murderers' heads, serial killers especially. But I have no idea how you can be. They're not family. Some of them are friends or whatever, but they're strangers.
Yeah.
And they are okay. So we'll talk about that. So welcome, Kay. Before we get into that, I want you to share with my audience a little bit about your background. I didn't pluck you out of the thin air to talk about this. You are an expert, if anyone is, in this kind of coverage. You are a true crime coverer. And tell my audience a little about your various platforms that you got out there.
Okay, well, as you mentioned, my platform. I've been sort of on a hiatus. I've taken a several-year hiatus to just sort of take a breather and take a break, really, honestly, from the true crime community. And we're going to kind of get into that, the sort of warfare, and lawfare, and, the down and dirty that goes on there. I needed to take a breather and a break from that to sort of get myself centered and my soul right, with all of it. And, if I'm being honest, I have enjoyed just spending a few years going back to being an observer, because you do see things a little differently when you learn more, right? When you're listening and you're observing, more so than when you're talking. And I've taken that opportunity to sort of sit back and observe. And it's been good for me. So I've covered multiple, we touched on some of them. The Watts case, Morphew is another big one that's kind of coming up. Lately, I've been sort of deep diving. It's been hard to find good podcasts on the West Memphis 3, but that's another one that I've been real fascinated with. But I have been obsessed with true crime from a very young age. I think maybe 5th grade. I grew up in the 70s and 80s, and that was a time period that was pervasive, with serial killers. And so that's really kind of where I got my start being fascinated with true crime, was Ted Bundy. And then, of course, Jeffrey Dahmer and various other, Son of Sam. And, I think Dr. Dorothy Ottnow put it best. She said, "Do you ever wonder why you don't murder?" Like, what causes people to murder? I think at the very heart of it, at the crux, that's what fascinates most people, including myself. Why? Why do people kill each other? I think even just looking at the Bible, the very first book of the Bible, what happens? A murder. A brother kills a brother. So it goes way back. And this is a story of humanity. This is a human story. And everyone looks a little different, right? The details are different in everyone. Everyone is nuanced and complicated and an onion, and you peel back layers, and the more you learn, the more you understand. And I think with the advent of social media, you have suddenly all of these voices, and you have all of these opinions, and you have all of this information. And now it's even harder to tell fact from fiction and truth from a lie. So it's difficult to sort of, weed through all of that, especially if you're someone who seeks the truth, who really wants to understand what happened in any particular case. And I think the Karen Read case is no exception. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of moving parts, and there's been a lot of opinions expressed. Beginning of February of 2022, the story was shared, a news clip of the story was shared in my creator group, my private creator group. And the news clip just gave a basic rundown of he was found on the lawn after a night of partying, and at another police officer's home, and his girlfriend was the one that was being charged, and they showed her in court, and her attorney was speaking. I believe they showed him speaking to the court, and a clip of him speaking to the court, a clip of him speaking to the public. And he said something to the effect of, "My client loved this man. She's devastated. This is a terrible accident." So seeing those words come out of a defendant's lawyer's mouth, I think everybody in the group was left with the impression that she did it. It was an accident. She felt bad, but here we were. She was being charged with his death. And at that time, what the specific charges were going to be were not, I don't believe they were necessarily outlined, because it would be some time before the charges were upped to murder. So, but I don't think I didn't see anybody expressing any doubts, or questions about. I think nobody knew the particulars and the specifics, but it was pretty well accepted that she did it. So that was the impression that I was left with. And it wasn't until just before the first trial, because the story had went on it was just another drinking, domestic violence, tragic accident. People are at that time in 2022, my group was still pretty active and there was constant stories. So it was just one of many. And so it wasn't until the start of the first trial that a longtime listener of mine reached out to me and said, "Hey, did you know that this story has been kind of turned on its ear and she's claiming she was framed?" And I said, "Wait, what?" I'm gonna have to look into that. And I did. That's when I began to look into the claims of her being framed.
So that's a great prelude to the case. And that's how everybody initially, even here close by, they were looking for something juicy, and it wasn't juicy.
No,
it was pointed out they were both drinking. She admitted to, right, even early on before, tried to get that she was framed, she had 8 vodka tonics or whatever it was, and she was driving, which is great. So we'll point out, because we're going to do Karen Read accident or event 101 in a minute, right. But we're sort of getting a little bit of it out, trickling out, which is fine. So in there, clearly, whether you want to say not relationship, we can talk about that too, but what that evening, was it a good evening? We have people at the bar saying, oh, they were huggy kissy, but clearly he was going to leave him at the party. She was going to go in, but for some reason, we'll talk about that, whether that comes out in the trial, because she never testified. She didn't go in, whether she said, go in if you want, I'm not, whether it was, okay, why don't you go in? Someone will take you home. I'm going home. Whatever it was, she was not going to be at the party. That's not a debatable thing.
She didn't testify in court, but she gave her version of events in a series of, she's done numerous interviews.
Even during the trial, first one, I believe she was on some of the talk shows, wasn't she? Or was it after the trial was a mistrial?
Numerous. I think she did. Yeah. She did local. She did.
And national.
She gave many. So for anybody that wants to look at her version of events or look at her account of what happened, it's there. And so when somebody gives an account of something, or they give their version of events, and you can see them, you can gauge their body language and the words they're using and the way they're saying things, that's fair game for any one of us to. I think it's human nature. You're going to examine it. You're going to look at her eyes. You're going to listen to her version. You're going to listen to her explanations. And the flip side of that is that when she's giving these accounts, again, it's human nature. When you're talking, people leak, right? Would you agree with that? People leak. And they may say too much, or they may be guarded about a certain thing that they're saying. Right. And so, again, all of these things are fair game. So she didn't take the stand and she didn't testify, but she told her story, again, like numerous media. Right. So for people that aren't familiar with the case, there's really plenty of there's plenty of material to go look for themselves and listen to what she has to say and see for themselves if they find her believable.
In the, as you point out, that she initially, through the lawyer, explains that, there was an accident. So they weren't trying to say she wasn't there. That kind of thing. I'm sure they assumed it was going to be some sort of low level, maybe not misdemeanor, but really low, negligent something. And again, I don't know the Boston or the Massachusetts laws, but it was going to be they felt, I'm sure, it's going to be low level and then she would then, even from there, if she wasn't going to contest it, then there'd be a plea bargain and you're going to go work at a drunken center or something for 6 months. And everything's happened. Now, again, I'll point out right here, when she gets charged, my opinion, she was overcharged. That's why she got off. I'm going to make that right now. With the rest, all the trials and everything, it was overcharge.
Yeah, you're certainly not
to charge her with, that's my opinion, with manslaughter, I believe, or murder too, or something really up there.
Well, they upped the charges later, right?
Later.
So they arrested her.
I know. Yeah. But she went to trial though on that charge, and there was more than one. And then, no offense, but leaving the scene of an accident. Well, first of all, you got to know that you did an accident. Part of what we'll point that out in our 101 coming up, that she at least claims through attorneys, not herself, that she didn't know she hit him. So you can't know you can't leave a scene of a crime or a accident unless you knew there was an accident.
Right.
So they weren't going to get far on that, even if But the main thing of that, there was intent. Whether it was she really didn't want to hit him, but he drove her car at him or something. Well, even if you didn't, you don't know what's in someone's head, that they wanted to just scare any of that stuff. What comes out, what is the outcome of that? You're responsible for.
Right.
So, you can't say, I didn't think I'd hit him, or I didn't think I killed him, or I would have stopped and got help if I thought all that stuff is fine. But ultimately, and I'm glad a law is this, like someone with a gun goes in to rob a bank and it goes off. Now, I didn't mean to kill anybody. Well, I'm sorry. You went in with the gun to rob a bank. I'm sorry. You're guilty of murder. I'm sorry. That's just how that goes. And I'm happy with that. So let's continue with Karen Read Trial 101. So we're up to the point where she is charged with a higher, and a trial is going to come. Let's talk about, we can get into a little bit of the evidence and what I call, and this I think is what feeds into some of the warring, and we'll get into that, is that all this other stuff, which we'll point out that's true. I mean, the police, some of it ineptitude, minimally ineptitude. Some of it you could, because based on text and stuff, there was animosity, there was misogyny, there was all sorts of stuff with these lovely male, poopers and all the rest of it. So that's over here. Here's some noise. But let's talk about the two theories of the crime. I don't think there's a third. So tell my audience the two theories of the crime.
Well, so on the one hand, you have the prosecution who claims that after a night of drinking, after really a day of arguing. So we know from the text data that came out that, and also from the testimony from John's friends and from John's niece, that there was relationship issues. The relationship was becoming frayed. The relationship was probably coming to an end, which incidentally is the peak, right? Those sort of peak times when domestic violence issues tend to occur. And so we know that there was some fighting. We know through the texts that he allegedly hit her in the face in the morning with a pillow. She leaned in to kiss him and he hit her in the face with a pillow. And now, interestingly, we have a little clip of video that's been released from John's driveway from what I believe to be the morning, because she's wearing the same jacket that she's wearing in the bar, where she follows him out to his car. He goes out to his car, and his car is parked right where you see it. And later on, we would learn the troopers did a well check in the morning after John was found. They went about 8:30 a.m. and did a well check, and his car is right there. So we see in this little clip video, she follows him out and he's waving his hand around at her, and you can't really hear what's being said, but the body language indicates that there's tension between the two of them and that there was however, in the video at the bar, he puts his arm on her back and they seem to be loving. And by all accounts, the witnesses testified that they seem to be loving. But listen, let's get real. Anybody who's been married or been in a relationship knows that's not uncommon. That's not uncommon to have tensions just beneath the surface and to be at odds with one another or be having issues in your relationship and, spend a day fighting. And then when you come together, I mean, think about the circumstances that they were coming together. they were drinking, right? And the start of any night when you're just starting to drink and have a good time, yeah, the moods are going to be elevated. Whenever a blizzard, as you said, I live in the Midwest and we get some doozies here too. And when a blizzard's coming and everything's going to be shut down and the kids aren't going to have school and you're not going to have to go to work, everybody's in a good mood, right? Let's go out, let's party, let's have a good time. So we know that the moods were elevated, right? I mean, that's just common sense that they were in a good mood. But then once they leave the bar and they're alone in her car, that is when it appears tensions flared or tempers flared. And I think we can surmise that just based on her angry voicemails. You can hear the rage in her voice, that the voicemails within, I think, 20 minutes of when she claimed she left. So back to what you asked, because I went off on a tangent there. The prosecution's argument is that after these tensions and then this night of drinking, heavy drinking by both of them, she drops him off. There's some altercation. He exits the car, and at some point, she pulls forward, I think it's 30 feet, right? And then her vehicle's telematics, and for people that want to question the telematics, I mean, all we have to do is look at the recent case. I can't.
By the way, I never heard of this thing. I never heard of this black box in my car that's spying on me until this case. Yeah. But it literally, and you can look it up online on what it does. But basically, if you make some kind of quick move or a panic brake or a fast acceleration, whatever, again, we get in it's weeds. There are times where for this podcast, it's not necessary. It's out there. Go look it up. But it records what she did if it fit this criteria. And based on what she did, it fit the criteria. What did it show?
Well, the telematics show that she depressed her gas pedal at 75%. Well, she initially went forward about 30 feet and then depressed her gas pedal down about 75% and went into reverse about 53 feet. Reaching a top speed of 24 miles an hour. So, and again, to the point of the telematics, this is not new. This has been used even used in the Morphew case. The vehicle telematics is a point in the Morphew case. So what's the girl that ran into the wall with killed her boyfriend and his friend. I can't think of her name. It's used in that case. I mean, it's used to convict people all the time. Your vehicle tells a lot. Now, all vehicles are a little different in how they store that information and how law enforcement retrieves that information and how they break down that information, how they parse that out. Okay. So it looks a little different for different types of vehicles, right? And so in this particular case, it was a Lexus. And so, the telematics are what they are. I mean, to quote Karen Read, the data is what the data is. She presented no defense in the second trial for that specific data point that her vehicle did that. And when her vehicle did that, prosecutors aligned that reverse event, okay, we'll refer to that as a reverse event, with John's phone movement stopping or ceasing. And the way they did that was using John's Waze. So John was attempting to navigate them because he had never been to the Albert home. Neither had she. And in fact, they had made a wrong turn and had to do a U-turn.
Just to interrupt for a second, because I've seen it or heard it in another podcast I did. I'm sorry, what was this app or part of? What is it called? Waze or
Waze? The Waze, and that was featured in the trial. That was, again, more data that was featured.
So is it an app you buy, or is it?
It's his navigation, right?
Okay.
His navigation.
It's a navigation. Okay.
Yeah.
It actually, and we'll get to that. It actually, I mean, I have for my wife.
He was connected to her cars, so that's how they know right where she was. I mean, in the second trial, first trial too, I think they did a better job in the second trial. They really narrowed down where her car stopped and where he was in relation to the car. And then, and then they correlated that with the steps that he took. And again, I'd have to go back to my notes. I think it was like 36 steps that he took, okay, within this moment. Okay, this snapshot or moment in time. And I think those 36 steps have puzzled people, but we'll get into that later. We can talk about that later. But they were able to narrow down where they stopped. And I want to point out here, according to Jennifer McCabe, who is a significant witness in this case and who's also a friend of John O'Keefe's, she testified that Karen initially tried to say she last saw John at the waterfall. So if that's true, that's significant. That's indicative of Karen Read distancing from that scene, in my opinion. No, I left him at the waterfall. And then they said, Jen McCabe said, no, we saw you in front of the house. We saw your SUV. So there was this attempt at first to distance from the scene. Why? So, but at any rate, his phone then, after this reverse event, literally within seconds, stops moving. And then the temperature of the phone immediately begins a slow descent. Okay. So this is the crux of the prosecution's case. And that is hard forensic evidence that went literally unchallenged by Karen Read in the second trial. Obviously, it didn't go unchallenged with her supporters and their opinions of their interpretation of that data, but that data went unchallenged. So, in other words, Karen Read did not put on her own expert to mitigate that or to argue that his phone stopped moving right there and started a temperature decline. So this is the prosecution. The crux of their case is the hard forensic evidence. And then on the defense side, you have, again, I go back to her lawyer saying, this is a tragic accident. She loved this man. She didn't mean to. She's sorry. To all of a sudden, there's this 180 done where she's suddenly claiming that no, she would then go on and do several interviews, as we talked about, where she told her version of events and that she dropped him off. She tells many different versions. One is she peeked his head in the door. One is he went inside. One is she's not sure. She had the music blaring. She had the heat going. She had the fan going. There's a lot going on. So she's not sure if he went inside or not. And she waited, and he never came back. So the defense's position is that he went inside and was, they first tried the stairs thing. He went up and down several flights of stairs, and that didn't pan out for them because those stairs were established to have been recorded while he was still in the vehicle. I think it was 12:21 a.m. is when the steps, and it was just impossible because they were still in the vehicle at that time. And it was testified to that sometimes the iPhone can record movement in a car as steps, understandably, that he went in the home. But that's their position. Their position is that he went, and then they sort of changed that. Well, he went in the garage, because they're trying to reverse engineer why the phone temperature goes into an immediate decline. And I want to make sure that I've got the time right, because it's so important that people understand how tight the timeline is, right? When I had my show, that was the one thing that I always really focused on, because the timeline, it's so critical, because when it's that short and it boxes someone in, okay, it's a whole lot easier for law enforcement and even observers to sort of make sense of what happened. So we know they arrive at 12:24, okay, and we know her reverse event was at 12:32. And his phone last moves at 12:32 and 9 seconds. You don't get much tighter than that, right? So what's going on between 12:24 and 12:32? Okay. And then we have the phone calls, voice messages from her beginning at approximately 1 a.m, where she's mad. She's screaming mad. Nobody knows where you are. You're an effing pervert. I effing hate you. I'm laying here with your niece, which was a lie. Okay. I'm laying here with your niece and nobody knows where you are. And she would later say, well, I said those things because I was trying to get him to answer. Well, this never made sense to me because you know where he was. You know where he was. You're on the one hand saying you saw him walk up to the house or you saw him enter the house, whichever it is. You know he's at the house. So you do know where he is. Why not just go back? I mean, I would go back there. I would go knock on the door. Where is he? Like, he never came out. Where is he? Her story is she drove away in anger. And indeed, we know that after this reverse event, she literally peeled out of there like a bat out of hell, okay, because she connected to his Wi-Fi. Again, I want to say, what was it, 12, 50, but somewhere close in there, right? Almost on the heels of the voice messages, she immediately began leaving the anger, right? And that's a clue. That anger and that rage is a clue, often just completely dismissed by her supporters. That anger is a huge clue. So she claims she left him there and then has no idea what happened to him. And her defense also narrowed in and focused on the perplexing arm injuries. And we can get into that too, the confusing, perplexing.
Well, one of the things that everything, yes, and we will, but everything that one of the things she said, she didn't know where he was, and I'm willing to accept she didn't know she hit him. Well, we can talk about that. That she, drove at him, but she didn't drive away at 1 o'clock and then call him, knowing that he's unconscious. So I'll give her that. I'll give a couple points to that. But she knew all the people who were in the house, right? At least a couple of them. Even at 1 a.m, I don't care when it is. You've got everybody in your contacts. You call Mary and Frank and Harry, and you go, look, he's not home. And I dropped him off, and it's winter, and he had something to drink. I hope he didn't fall down in the snow before he made it to the house. Why would she be only calling him? That part I don't. It doesn't.
And the plan to go to the Albert home was concocted at the end of the evening. So that plan, she was fully a part of it. She may not have wanted to go, but she was a part of that plan discussion. She was there. They were all saying we're going back to his house. The testimony was she wanted Chris Albert to make pizza. She wanted to have pizza and hang out in his restaurant. And people weren't on board with that. They wanted to go back to Brian Albert's home. So, you can kind of envision this, as a sort of a caravan of people, all went there. So you have the major players in this case went to that home. Brian Higgins, Brian Albert, his wife, and you had various others. It was Brian Albert's son's birthday. So Brian Albert's son was there with several of his friends who we heard from at trial, including Brian Albert's nephew, Colin, made a brief appearance, but then left somewhere around 12:15 before John and Karen even arrived. And again, her side and her position, I think by necessity of the people that were there, they chose the third party culpability route, and which is viable for a defendant to do that. But for a defendant to do that, there must be some anchor in there to make it viable. It must have life to it. It must have some sort of truth to it. And the judge, to her credit, did not allow the third party culpability in either trial because there just was nothing to support it that somebody else killed him. There was no evidence. And look, we're not talking about, people can call into question the police's tactics or the incompetence of the small town. And I come from a small town, okay? I can imagine my little tiny town and my little police department, excuse me, potentially making the same moves, okay? In a situation like that, you have to step outside, kind of, it's hard for people to do, to compartmentalize like that. You have to step outside what you know and travel back in time and put yourself in the shoes of those police officers and what they didn't know at that time when they showed up. For all they knew, they're just showing up to a guy on his back in a snowstorm. They really did not understand the full nature of his injuries. The Canton police did not find the debris field. That wasn't found until later in the evening by the CERT team. So they were not there putting the pieces together that he was hit by a car. For all they know, was drinking, stumbled, and fell, and froze to death. And indeed, hypothermia was one of his diagnoses.
One of the causes. Right?
One of the causes of death. So they're seeing this, and their first response, of course, is to get him help and to call in first responders and get him warmed up so they can see if they can save his life. That is what they're there to do.
Therefore,
right. They're not there to begin investigating and trying to, Sherlock Holmes a situation. That was not their role. And in the state of Massachusetts, that is the role of the state police when there's an unattended death. But understanding when he was found, he wasn't technically
homicide.
Dead.
He wasn't dead yet, right?
Right. He was. Well, he was for all intents and purposes.
He wasn't pronounced.
He wasn't pronounced. So the goal is at that point to save his life. So they're rushing him out of there. So I'm sure, as you can understand, it was chaotic. It was a chaotic scene. So,
So we should point out, because we're giving just the facts, ma'am, snow had fallen.
Yes.
So there was, it wasn't 10 feet, but this is, again, northeast, and it was overnight snow. It was December, overnight snow. And so there was, and you can tell me, I don't know the exact 3 inches, 4 inches, whatever, it was enough. And there was plows out. So it was enough snow that they felt they needed to plow the roads. And so all the other, the stuff they finally find, and we'll talk about, if we want to, we could talk about broken glasses and part of the backup light or whatever, the brake light of the automobile, the Lexus. So they find these things under the snow, in the snow, around the snow. They find his phone under him or whatever. And it would have been a little different if there were no weather, but there was weather. So they're not seeing with their eyes at that moment and not wanting to. That's not their job to see, oh, look, that's probably part of the crime over there, that piece of glass. Yes. We got a body here we're trying to save, or a person here we're trying to save.
And the debris field was in the street along the curb. So his shoe, some of the glass, some of the taillight, was in that debris field in the street, which would have been potentially plowed. That evidence could have been inadvertently moved. So that took time. And, as anybody who lives in a state where it snows knows, things show up later, right? I mean, I know, like in front of my home, when every time it snows, the plow comes through and he makes like this big mound in front of my house, and anything that's under there, you're not finding until the thaw. So they had a mess. I mean, it literally was the perfect storm, to use that phrase. So there was a mess at that scene, and there was a lot of snow. And so by the time CERT, the rapid response, the response team got there, the evidence response team got there and began actually sort of unearthing that debris field and finding and then cataloging, and then the snow is still coming down. The conditions were obviously very difficult. So again, to sort of just go back in time, police are at that point just trying to piece together what happened. And to add to that, you have first responders who were obviously communicating with police. Everybody's trying to put together what happened. You have the family that was in the home. You have the witnesses who were anticipating and who were looking out the window and saw her vehicle out there, that are piecing it together in their minds and going, but wait a minute, we saw her car and with this and that. And so what could have happened? And then you have the defendant, you have Miss Karen Read, sort of running around the scene. I've termed it an Oscar-worthy performance because I believe it was a performance, but just let's be generous with her and let's say that she was in hysterics. She was running around the scene saying things like, could I have done this? Did I hit him? Did I, could I have done this? Was it me? How long has he been out here? Could he have been out here for hours? I mean, she was making what we call excited utterances and excited admissions. Those matter. That matters. I mean, that's evidence. So then you have the first responders who are communicating with police. Well, she's at the scene and she's basically admitting that she hit him, or she's concerned she hit him. And to back up even before that, when she woke the niece up to call Jen McCabe, because I'm not sure she had Jen McCabe's phone number. We know she had Brian Higgins, who was there in the home. She had his phone number. We know that. But I don't know if she had Jen McCabe's phone number. So she woke up the niece at around 4:53 in the morning to ask her to contact Jen McCabe. Reason being, well, I don't know where John is and I'm freaking out and I think he was hit by a plow. I mean, this is a young girl who's already lost both of her parents and she's being woken up out of a dead sleep and being told that her uncle is missing, can't be found. They don't know where he is. And he could have been hit by a plow. I mean, can you just imagine what was going on?
We need to point out for those who don't know that, as you said, that both the parents of her and her brother
are deceased.
Were deceased in close proximity to each other, not of evil things, just disease. And I don't know if they were both cancer. At least one of them was cancer. And right. So he had taken upon himself, and he was not married. He took upon himself to be the guardian of, now they were, at that age or that time, they weren't small children. They might have been preteens or teens. Yeah, so he became their guardians. And of course, fortunately, and I know, again, we're getting a little bit into the weeds, but Karen Read obviously she's not married, and they're sort of semi-living together, everybody. And so she's getting at times, hey, my attention, or I've got to take care of the kids because you're a cop. So I'm picking them up at school or whatever, and they're not my kids and blah, blah, blah. Right. So there was I'm sure there was some tension about that. But as you point out, it's now being planted a seed, not on purpose. She is planted in her head, the young niece's head, that, guess what? You may have lost another guardian, another family member who was your loved one. Right. And so go call Jennifer so we can find out if he's dead or not. I mean, man, that's cold. I mean, I don't know what else she could have done if she wanted, again, she on her own could
to the house.
But she wants other people. So it's not like, when I was a kid, I did something wrong and it was hidden somewhere. And I kept saying, if my mother finds that, I'm in big trouble. So I made up this weird story to blame my brother so she'd find it and not blame me. It didn't work, but it's like she can't probably be too knowledgeable of what's happening. So she's going, I don't know where. I don't know when I last saw. So you're right. She wants someone else to join the search. And she unfortunately enlists this poor girl.
She didn't want to find him. She didn't want to find him alone, in my opinion. She wanted to have other people with her when he was, quote, officially found. Again, that is the behavior of someone, once again, distancing. She's distancing from the mess she made.
Involvement.
Right. From her involvement. I mean, it's so common. It's almost textbook. We see it in so many other cases.
how many murderers, how many, not even serial killers, find the body?
Yes.
In quote, I'm doing quotes for the radio audience. So they find the body. Oh my God, here she is. And it's, I mean, half the time, it's not found by a loved one or the police when they don't show up at work. It's, oh my God, my wife has a hatchet in her head.
Yes.
It's like, okay.
Right.
And it's got
Right.
your prints all over. But I digress.
Right. The perpetrator doesn't want to be the one to call 911 because they know how that looks, right? Again, it's almost textbook. They want to put that distance between them and the mess that they've left behind. So Karen Read's team, by necessity of adopting this third party. So as I said, my first introduction was seeing these news clips and seeing her lawyer say she's sorry, she didn't mean to, she had no criminal intent. And be that as it may, that could be true, as you've pointed out. It could be true that she didn't mean to, and she just reversed to continue the argument. That the reverse maneuver was, to quickly get back in line with him, so she could have her passenger side window down and continue to argue with him, whatever they were arguing about in that 6 minutes they were sitting out there in the car. Or did he get out? Because, it's possible he got out. He was standing at the window, right?
And yelling through the window or whatever.
Right, or yelling through the window. So by necessity, in order to turn that on its heel, her lawyer, David Yannetti, then they put on this big production. They had a pre-trial hearing. And I want to say this was June 2022, where she, of course, by this point had built up a sizable army. Okay, we're going to use that term because
start using the term, because this is where it's going to start coming in.
Right,
supporters that she is not guilty.
Right, a people who just blindly believe that, and I say that, I stress that, because these are people who have not yet seen any of the evidence. No. They have seen nothing. They're blindly believing for whatever their reasons, and the reasons, I would wager, run the gamut, and they're different for every single person who supports her. And so this sort of blind faith and blind belief, the mantra becomes, she was framed. And as I was telling you, when we were there and we took the kids to Plymouth to see Plymouth Rock, they were standing in the roundabout during trial 2 with signs saying Karen Read was framed. That was their mantra. That was their, what they were trying to assert, because her lawyers were asserting it. Karen was framed. She was framed by the people in the house. She was framed by the police officers who investigated. And then the trickle-down effect of that is that everybody must be on board, from evidence technicians to first responders to
medical examiners. Everybody's in on the,
begins with her lawyer, David Yannetti. That is really, from what I can ascertain, is really the ground floor of that third party culprit claim. Okay. So everything that comes after that, again, is a sort of reverse engineering to substantiate that claim. Now, the judge, to her credit, wanted some semblance of proof or evidence. And I don't think people really understand this. It doesn't really even have to be a lot, okay? It doesn't have to be a lot of evidence. There has to be something. There has to be something of substance to point in the direction of a third party. And Karen Read, and again, this case is there's so many layers to this. She brings in this turtle boy, Aiden
Let's
Kearney.
talk turtle boy, because we're talking again about supporters.
I hate to do it, but it's part of the story. Listen, I think it was Oliver Goldsmith who said, every absurdity has a champion willing to defend it. Every absurdity. So this third party culprit claim is absurd on its face because it is lacking. It is completely lacking in any evidence. There may be innuendo. There may be, again, this reverse engineering to make it fit. And there might be claims and there might be opinions and speculations, but none of that is facts and evidence. None of that is, and the judge called them on that. And Karen Read, we now know, okay, we've now just learned in the last day or two, I think it was long speculated, but we now know right from the horse's mouth, Rachel Rollins, who was the Massachusetts U.S. attorney, has said from her own lips that Karen Read approached her to light the fire to begin the investigation into the investigation. That is right from disgraced U.S. Attorney Rachel Rollins has admitted that. That is huge. The fact there's no foundation for it is huge because Karen Read approaches Rachel Rollins, disgraced U.S. Attorney Rachel Rollins, to get the Department of Justice to open an investigation into the investigation of John O'Keefe. And so this involves then the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the Boston office, FBI, getting involved. To what ends, we don't know because the report has never been released except to the judge. So the judge has this, I believe it was 4,500 pages.
Was this before the first trial, during the first trial, between the trials?
Before the first trial. Yes, okay. In pretrial hearings, the judge basically said to Karen's team, I have the FBI, I have the documents that the DOJ has sent me. There's nothing in here to substantiate third-party culpability. You've got nothing. You've got nothing except accusations. And that's not going to fly in a courtroom that requires facts and evidence. Now, that is to her credit that she disallowed that. But I think it speaks volumes that Karen Read was able to get Rachel Rollins to get this investigation into the investigation open. And as we now know, what a can of worms that opened. That allowed them then to get Michael Proctor's phone data, right. and to the FBI paid visits, to these people, these witnesses. They did their own little sort of mini investigation. And what they also did, which is critical, is they recreated the events at the scene. The FBI actually hired a accident reconstruction team to recreate two very crucial points. One, does John's injuries match? Are they consistent with a collision with a vehicle? Two, is the damage to the taillight consistent with a cocktail glass being thrown at the taillight and breaking the taillight? The accident reconstruction team, we now know, is ARCA. They recreated the cocktail glass throwing and found that it almost perfectly matched the damage pattern to the taillight. And then also, said, no, his injuries are not consistent with what is typically seen in a pedestrian strike. So in a pedestrian strike, you're typically going to see lower body injuries because generally people are upright and standing when they're hit. And he had a series of injuries on his arm that were not consistent with being struck by a moving vehicle. So that was really sort of an Achilles heel and a boon to her team, because how can they bring in the cocktail glass without then, do you know what I'm saying? That really ties her in. That's motive, right? If he threw this glass at the back of her car and she heard it, she then would become enraged enough to, back up at him. So they wanted to sort of distance and avoid that. And I admit, I sort of balked at that at first because, naturally human nature, you want to sort of protect the victim because they're dead. So you don't want to go too deep into what they may have done in the moment. But the fact of the matter is, we weren't there. 99.9% of us did not know him. We did not know him when he was drinking. We did not know him when he was sober. We don't know what was going on in his head. We don't know what his internal dialogue was. We don't know what his frustration level was at 12:32 a.m. In that fight with her. We don't know what he was capable of. We do know that he was an avid baseball player. I believe he coached. He loved baseball. And so I just find it interesting that Arca recreated this throwing of the cocktail glass at the taillight at the same speed an adult man would throw a baseball.
Baseball. Look at that.
And it perfectly recreated the damage to the taillight. So that has always
we got a question. Was it a curveball or was it a changeup?
Right, exactly. And I can't go into that with you because I'm not a baseball aficionado. I'm not an expert by any means.
Well, let's just take a minute here because I think this is a good place to drop it in. Is the alternative theory of the crime. I'll just do it briefly. You can correct me if I'm wrong. If you want to really condense it, it's he goes into the house after any kind of altercation. He's not hit. He goes into this is defense. He goes into the house, into this party that's got thousands of people. Again, you got the kids having the party, and you have the adult. When I say kids, the adult kids of people and birthday party and going on. So there's a party going on, and again, we get how big the house is, but there's a basement, probably finished, and then upstairs. So there's a party going on. So at some time during the party, and again, this is her theory, that there's some kind of altercation or a fight. He picks a fight with someone. Everyone's drunk. Someone throws a punch. We've done enough of these things where someone just even bumps the wall and they're dead. Okay. But he hits a coffee table. He hits the corner of a sharp bar, drink bar, and he goes down. And again, you got to believe the people there, I would hope, if you buy this theory, they decide he's dead. Mm-hmm. Okay. They do a feel for him. So they don't call emergency. What they decide to do as policemen and involved with police procedure, 2 of them or 4 of them pick him up. He's dead, quote unquote. So we can't help him. Or he's half dead, but we don't care. We don't want to get in trouble. So, because it can be manslaughter if I punched him and he fell his head.
Right.
So we walked him outside. And gee, what are we going to do? Put him in the car and put him in the creek nearby? No. We dump him on our front lawn.
Right.
So they walk him out. They dump him on the front lawn. They all run back in the house and party. And they say, look, whatever happens in the morning happens. Am I wrong? I mean, being a little
right. And they just happen to know exactly where his GPS would put him. I mean, there's no way they could know that, where his GPS would ultimately.
Oh, well, that's the other part, too, that the GPS on the phone says the phone did not move from where his body was.
Right.
So the theory, now again, okay, I'm being the defense now. All right, I'll fix this for you. I'll fix this. Right. All right. He was angry and she pulled away, maybe even aimed the car, but he wasn't hit and he's pissed. And somehow he had along with the glass, he had his phone in his hand. And he dropped his phone.
All right.
Now, none of us would go in anywhere, even if we didn't know we dropped it. First thing we get into a house, how drunk we are. Where's my phone?
Right.
And I go out and get it. But for the sake of argument, it drops in the phone and the snow that starts to cool it. So that it never moves from here. So he goes in the house. Everything I just said happened. They bring him out in the dark, in the snow, and go, "Where's his phone?"
Right. Let's take him back to his phone. Let's take him back. Let's put his phone in his back, under his shoulder. Right.
Let's drop him on his phone so that then his phone and him will be found. He never made it
Right.
into the house. We're safe. All right. There you go. There you go. All right. So that's the theory. Now, I believe in Occam's razor,
Yes, me too.
which
Yeah.
says if there's competing theories, the simplest one is usually right. So
Yeah.
her, even without intent, accidentally, hits him and kills him versus
Yeah.
what I just said. That
Yeah.
just the defense one makes no
Right.
sense.
It makes no sense. It's absurd. Again, but there's no, again, I go back to Goldsmith's quote about there's always going to be champions for absurdities, right? For people that are just willfully blind to common sense, logic,
So
reason, and facts.
at this
Yeah.
point, we could talk a little bit more. The only thing I'd like to get your opinion on, and I may put it in here, it's not that it muddies it, but what I really do want to talk about is the supporters. So as you say, she's not only does she get supporters, but she gets thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars.
Yes, a whole lot of money came rolling in. And again, that's not, the money is really not shocking to me. I want to back up to Karen Read, the third party culpability. Let's but there needs to be a point of clarity here about who specifically they targeted with their accusations. So her lawyer stood in open court and literally named Colin Albert, okay, who is the nephew of the homeowner of the home. Okay, so just to remind people, he was there and left roughly about 12:15 when his cousin came and picked him up and got him. So he wasn't even there when Karen and John arrived. Okay, and that has never, again, was not challenged. Now, I guess her side would argue, well, they weren't allowed to argue third party. Well, they've got their chance now, so they better have the goods on this kid, right? And they're getting his phone data. So, but they first blamed Colin Albert, and it sort of mushroomed and ballooned into involving multiple other people that were in the home. So it could have been Brian Albert who beat him up. It could have been Brian Higgins in a fit of jealousy, wanting Karen Read, which we know from testimony at trial that Karen Read was trying to, for lack of a better term, hit on him. Okay. She was trying to put the moves on this ATF agent, Brian Higgins, who I think was, just sort of had a friendly acquaintance situation with John O'Keefe. I don't think they were best buddies. I don't think they were best friends, but they were acquainted. And she was trying to put the moves on him. And indeed, I think had gone to his house, or he had gone to her house, or they had gone to, she had invited him out to a bar. There was some evidence that they shared a kiss, that she kissed him at John's house, strangely. So there was this stuff going on, okay, where she was being disloyal to John O'Keefe. Mm-hmm. And so they then brought in Brian Higgins. Well, Brian Higgins, he was at a fit of jealousy. And then the dog got into the melee. And so, all of this. And again, with the reverse engineering. So once they went with that third party, this is just me, Kay, speaking my opinion here.
Kay talking, okay.
This is just Kay talking. My observation. Her legal team jumped on the opportunity to obfuscate as best they could what happened at that house for the benefit of their client. But the problem is, in today's world, with social media, and we're going to get into that, being so invested and so involved and picking sides and joining armies and digging down in trenches, her team knows that. They're not dumb. Her lawyer, Alan Jackson, knows this. He knows how this works now. He knows the landscape, the true crime landscape that we live in now, where you can pay influencers. Johnny Depp did it notoriously. You can pay legal people that don't have law degrees and people that maybe aren't as sophisticated, okay, as lawyers, now can make far more online on YouTube channels than they can in the courtroom. So they have this they all have this automatic sense of respect. And people think that their word is gospel or what they're saying can be trusted. That's why they call it influencing. And these law tubers, they know exactly what they're doing. They're selling what they're told to sell. So what you had Karen Read's team do, and I just want to say, with all fairness, I don't necessarily begrudge them putting on a defense. The argument then becomes of the ethics of this, of creating this machine of this guilt denial, where you do have influencers who have huge followings of people who hang on their every word, where whether you're paying these people or these people are getting, because they're getting the audience for it, right. They're getting super chats or getting this. The money is so huge that it's so hard for these people to turn that down and to try to wrangle people's brains and bring them back to reality and bring them back to what matters. And that's the actual facts and evidence. So they create this machine that spins and obfuscates and muddies the water, and to use the old phrase, smoke and mirrors, to create all of this smoke and mirrors so that people become lost in the minutia of it all, and their brains are dragged away from the facts and evidence, just like Alan Jackson liked to said, don't look over there, look here, okay? Don't look over here at the facts and evidence, look here at the stories that we're spinning that are salacious and gossipy, and it's like you said at one point, it's so much more interesting that he went in the home and a fight ensued and he was attacked by a dog and a teenager and a couple girls, then this mundane, very classic story of domestic violence. 1 in 4 men are victims of violence. 1 in 3 women are victims of violence. You tell me what is more common, domestic violence or police and dozens of ancillary law enforcement professionals framing somebody for a murder they didn't commit, for a murder they know that couldn't have committed. Extraordinary claims like Karen's legal team made require extraordinary evidence. Extraordinary. Extra claims require extra evidence. And her team never ponied up any extraordinary evidence. Never, not once. And again, if they had it, the judge would have allowed it at trial because she has the right to say somebody else did it. She has the right to say that. She has the right to make that claim, and she has the right to prove that claim. What's important is that she prove it. And the way to prove it is with facts and evidence. And by the end of trial 2, you see her coming out of trial, and she's finally being asked some difficult questions by local media and some court TV reporters. Well, what about the car data? Well, it kind of is what it is. Well, what about this? What about that? Well, it is what it is. What about the John's GPS, his cell phone data? Well, I think she says coming out of the court. Well, I think Ian Whiffen explained it pretty well. I mean, so she was submitting at the end there, at the end of trial 2. And I think that's what's so frustrating is she was submitting to their evidence and she still walked. The jury still refused to just look at the hard facts and evidence that even she herself was submitting to. If I was sitting on that jury and Alan Jackson was saying to me, Colin did this, Brian Albert did this, Brian Higgins did this, a dog did this, I would then be sitting back and saying, show me how they did it. Show me evidence that he went in that home. Show me something that mitigates this extremely tight timeline down to literal seconds.
Now, just because you made that point about in the house, we have all the fancy schmancy, but I know this has to do with the frame part. They've got to come up when they do, and we don't have to get into this, but because of text back and forth, not even people in the house, this Proctor guy who's now been fired or has quit and all that. Right. We understand that. He was it's like, I make the analogy, he's like Mark Furman. Mark Furman was a pig.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean everything he said was corrupt. But there are not just the cops, but there are a bunch of kids wandering around, and not one of them said they ever saw O'Keefe
come in the home. Right. Not a single one of them.
Did I miss something, or am I wrong?
No, you're right on the money.
I don't mean a witness to a fight. I don't mean a witness to I don't know, somebody breaking a glass. I don't mean anything. I'm saying they're all, the kids are downstairs, whatever. Could you send somebody in your house to a party and everybody's drinking and talking? Someone that, not a stranger, someone that people know. Right. Can you imagine anything in your life where you're having a Thanksgiving, anything, a Christmas party, a birthday party, and someone comes into your house and there's 12 people, 20 people, whatever the number was, and they weren't all in one room. I understand that. So he went into the bathroom and stayed there until he was killed. I mean, and no one saw him. Right.
It's incomprehensible. It's absurd. No, it's again, it's an absurdity. It's ridiculous. It's preposterous. It's absurd. And so again, if a defendant, of course, a defendant is going to say, I didn't do it, right? That's not shocking that a defendant doesn't want to go to prison or doesn't want to face accountability for a crime that they committed. So it's understood. It goes without saying that somebody is going to deny and going to fight charges. Okay. And that's a crucial point. Was she initially, there's the appearance that she's taking accountability, and then a 180 based on an anonymous phone call to her lawyer, which we only have his word for. Okay.
Well, even if it was, it could be any nut on the street. I mean, someone to support her.
Right. That's not evidence. It's evidence of nothing.
No, it's evidence.
Not. Right.
No.
So, but she initially took accountability, and then the second arrest happens and they up the charges. And they up the charges because the vehicle data shows intent. You don't reverse your car. It's an erratic act to depress your gas pedal in reverse, not knowing what's behind you, or knowing someone could be, and then you hit and you kill them. That is technically under Massachusetts.
You might do it. I've never done it. I put my car in the wrong thing and go, whoa, I got a car in front of me. But you don't put it in reverse, floor it, and go more than 5 feet, thinking maybe you're going forward. Maybe she's so pissed, I'm going to burn out of here. So she puts it in drive and hits the gas, and all of a sudden she's going.
Well, what's interesting is we know from the vehicle data, she rolled forward. So she was in drive. She rolled forward that 30 some feet. Okay. Yep. So she rolled forward. She's inching towards the neighbor's side of the street. Yep. And so she's in drive. So she had to gear shift from drive to reverse to back up. Now, as I was saying to you, since none of us were there, okay, again, we're all just observers after the fact of the evidence and information that comes out, okay? And then each one of us goes through a process of parsing through that information and that evidence, and hopefully, okay, you hope people do that seriously, because, when someone's liberty is on the line, or somebody has lost their life, okay, you want justice for the person who's lost their life, and you want justice for the person whose liberty is on the line. That's a very serious matter in our country, in American jurisprudence. When somebody is could lose their liberty and go to prison. You want it to be fact and evidence based, not emotional. You want to try to remove emotion, and you want to just focus on the facts and evidence so that it's fair to the person being on trial for their life, and so that it's fair for the person who's lost their life, right? So in the essence of fairness and keeping it in facts and evidence, you have to be really careful where you let your mind go, right? When you're parsing through the facts and the evidence, right? Sure, we're all going to apply anecdotal, well, and I've done this and I thought, okay, but you have to be really careful not always do that too. You have to be careful to be as impartial as you possibly can be, and just to apply facts and evidence, and to obviously apply the law as you know it. But it also, like I said, it is fair to apply common sense, right? We know the incidences of domestic violence. We know how and when domestic violence occurs in relationships. It's most often at the end, is when people are injured or murdered, when someone's trying to get away from someone. It's fine to apply that, right, to this case, because this case has the hallmarks of domestic violence all over it. Her voicemails alone are abusive. Those are alone. And I say this as a person I can be as mouthy as a sailor. My husband and I have had, as I've said, we've had some knockdown dragouts, especially when we were younger. I'm not sitting in a position of judgment and saying and condemning Karen. I'm saying, right, I recognize this level of anger and rage, and I recognize this argument, the tenor of this argument, right? Because I'm a human being and I'm a woman and I've been mad at a man. And I know how men act and perceive things. And men, when they reach the end of their tether, sometimes combust, right? Mm-hmm. Women were sort of like, we let out bits of steam, right? And men, right, it tends to go like this. They're like the tempest in a teapot. And then all of a sudden, kaboom, they explode in anger, okay? So when people sit and they parse through that evidence and they work through that evidence as observers, it is important to do that, to not be blind about it, to access that critical thinking part of their brain. And unfortunately, what we saw in this case on a grand scale was a lot of people who surrendered. They just surrendered that. They just checked their brains at the door. It was like entering a club. And once you enter this club, don't question. You can't say. And if you question and you say these things, okay, because I did, right? I would go, not really in an official capacity, but I would go and just enter into some of these discussion groups or the Karen Read, the Facebook group, and I would say things like, but what about, how do you explain this or that? First of all, they dodge that, and they have an answer for everything. And so, but you need to, by necessity, check all of that at the door. And right. It's not fair. It's not fair to Karen Read, really, ultimately, at the end of the day, to do that. Because in my opinion, her getting off the criminal case, and we can talk about how she was overcharged, because I think we glossed over that. I know you believe that. I understand why they did it, but I think they shot themselves in the foot with that.
With the charging, whether it's over or not, I don't think there was enough evidence.
No,
all the technical stuff they had, and they didn't know that when they charged her. So they did get the technical stuff from the car, and that's all good. But they didn't realize how much, noise that they were going to get from the defense, machine, and they had to fight that.
Right. So this machine, going back to that,
they would have had much. I think there would have been a settlement, especially if you say what she said from the beginning. It still would have had to been something serious, not a misdemeanor. They would have been, I don't know what the technicalities in the Massachusetts general laws. I was a paralegal for about an hour and a half, so I throw these things out. But I don't know what the laws are, but they could have got her on something, a class something felony that would be on her record and would help people who want to sue her for wrongful death. We'll talk about that. Still going to happen, but it helps if you got a criminal conviction before you do that, because putting her in jail doesn't bring back Mr. O'Keefe.
Right.
So,
but and if you look at her behavior, at the very beginning, right? I always tell people, travel back in time in your mind, go back in time to that snapshot, to those first few hours and those early morning hours, and he's found her behavior seems to indicate that she was going to say, did I mean to? I mean, she even says it. She does in one of the interviews she says, I was questioning, did I do it? Because she was going to go with, did I do it? I didn't mean to. If I did, I didn't mean to. But then when her lawyer says to her, it doesn't matter if you meant to, it doesn't matter if you knew. You still have an element of culpability. And then that singular exchange explains to you what kicked off the machine that was created by her.
It's very clear. You get to talk to a lawyer. And I believe in lawyers. I believe in our adversarial relationship in court. And God bless us, we're better than anybody out there, no matter what they want to say. So the defense attorney, they can't lie and all that, but they don't have to go for justice. They're there for their client. So I give it. But the moment they get involved, and obviously I'm guessing they did not advise at any time, look, Karen, we can fight this. It's a 50-50. We're going to come up with these ideas, which could be true, but we're not even sure if we believe them, but they're plausible. We're going to put those out there, or we can talk, not you, Karen, but we can talk to the prosecutor and say, look, she's got no record. She's got this, she's got that. She maybe even likes to take care of the kids, whatever. So
she's gainfully employed. She has her own home.
What can you offer us?
Right. What can you offer us? And I think it's possible that maybe things we don't know because we're not behind the scenes, but I think it's possible that those things were happening. I don't know, but it's possible those things are probable, right? That those things were happening. And then the data comes in, because it takes time for that, the vehicle's telematics to be analyzed and for that information to come back. And when that information came back that there's now a reckless component. So that's reckless, negligent behavior then that was involved. It wasn't like he just slipped and fell in front of your car as you were driving away. This is you intentionally reversed where you knew he likely was.
What could be standing?
Could be standing or kneeling, as I've postulated. I've postulated that he knelt, that he bent down to pick up the glass that he threw. Because I think that would be in keeping with his personality. That he would be like, oh shit, look what I did. Oh, no, I'll go pick up, but now I'm gonna pick up my mess, right? That would be something a gentleman would do. Oh shit, I threw this glass. I'm gonna go clean it up now. Was he kneeling down on his right knee, and picking it up with his right arm, at just that right moment, that kaboom, and these newer vehicles, they're quiet. Right? We have a new Jeep, and I wouldn't hear if my husband, I don't know if I would hear. It's so quiet, right? I can barely hear the motor running, especially at night, and the wind is blowing.
You don't have the big pipes. You don't have the big pipes going.
No pipes. No, but the cell motor is so quiet. I'm like, God, you hardly know this. He leaves it running because he can't hear that it's running. I mean, we've gotten out, gone to the store, and gotten back, and the car's running. And I'm like, what the hell? He's like, well, I can't hear it. I'm like, oh, I didn't hear it either.
Let's talk. Let's just again continue on with, because I want to also get with your personal experience with other situations, whatever you want to share. Again, we talked a little bit before we were taping that I have no negative things out there. I mean, I have people saying that was a boring podcast, but nobody's after me. Nobody's after me personally. Nobody comes negatively. So let's again go to these. There are these, as you rightfully, I will accept the words, warring factions of an exhibit. Again, everyone, you're watching something on court TV and you have an opinion. Murdoch or any of these people, you say, okay, you're sitting there going, I think he did it, or I didn't think he did it. And then you might form, gee, I don't think he did it, and I think he's getting a raw deal. Or I did think he's doing it, and he's going to get off. We heard again, the thing got overturned. He's still spending the rest of his life in prison on the financial crap. But so what turns people into, in your opinion, what turns people in this case, and you can enlighten me, are these groups out there for other cases?
Oh, absolutely.
Do we have Ted Bundy, free Ted Bundy, or I'm trying to think of somebody who's still in the court system. But
you certainly, John Benet Ramsey,
free Mary, or free Joanne, or don't crucify Joanna. Are there actually groups? I don't mean opinions that people write a letter or something, or they're interviewed on the street. This is how I got involved. There are groups that, as you say, you can even just, I lurk. I don't comment. I lurk and read it and go, whoa. But has it been your experience over the years you've been doing this? Is this normal, the Karen Read thing?
Yeah, well, I think to the Karen Read, it was like on steroids, for many, many reasons that we can dive into. But absolutely, you brought up the Jean Benet Ramsey case. I mean, that case is so divided, and it's literally divided down the middle on the people that believe the parents were involved versus people that think an intruder committed. Okay, you go to Scott Peterson, Madeleine McCann, Travis Alexander, so many cases where you have, well, listen, okay, again, it's human nature for people to want to form teams, right? It's why we love sports.
You can be a Yankees fan, or you can be Knicks, go Knicks.
Yes. Human nature is to form a team. Okay. Yep. Human nature is also to form cults of personality, right? We have identity politics, which is huge in this country, right? Which has really just infected the political landscape, right? You can't go anywhere in the political landscape without getting slapped in the face with identity politics and personality, okay? The cult of personality. So there's this human drive to do this. There's this human drive to pick a team, join an army, pick a side, join a side, and dig down into the trenches. And I use this language very specifically because it becomes very embattled. It becomes a battle. And partially, I think, because people like to do battle, right? It's an endorphin rush to get online and argue. And I love to debate. Again, I'm not casting judgment because I am the queen of debate. I absolutely love a good civil debate. I live for it. I grew up, I spent my teenage years under the roof of a military man who would engage me in political debate. And that's how I learned. I mean, that is how you learn. You learn by getting slapped down or by winning the debate. Mm-hmm. And I was never afraid to do that. And so, no judgment. People love to do that. And they love to dig down on these trenches. And they believe what they believe, right? In far too many instances, people will form a blind belief, and that we live under a system that the truth ultimately is supposed to be illuminated by the evidence. The evidence is paramount. Evidence is all. The evidence, because none of us were there, the evidence is the roadmap. The evidence is the blueprint. The evidence is the guide. And unfortunately, when you have these armies form and these teams form, the evidence gets lost in that, typically, usually for one side. Okay.
Right.
It can, both sides can kind of engage in this evidence dismissal antic. But you have this phenomenon, right, where there's this guilt denial, and you have guilt denial and you have innocence denial going on now in the true crime community. And these content creators, all they really care about is their wallet. Okay. I wish I still had my props or I'd hold up my fake money. The money is their God. They don't care. They really do not care about the evidence and about the facts. They want what will make, they will put out what will make them the most money. And these are not stupid people. They're very savvy. They see which way. And it's really hard. I've tried in the past to sort of put numbers and percentages, but it's really hard to do that because you can only do that in sort of an anecdotal way, because you can't really, unless you go do your own sort of double blind and you go talk to people and and you go to Massachusetts, you go travel the country and you ask, most people didn't even hear of this case, right? So it's really hard to put a number on it. But for all intents and purposes, Karen Read's side had the appearance of having the majority.
Oh, there's no question. I'll let you go back to this, but I have to point out, because you didn't go to the actual, I didn't go to the trial. And the Turtle Boy got in all the time. He's a journalist, but I couldn't go in just as a whatever. But I went to the square where everybody was meeting with their signs.
Oh, did you?
And let me point out. So we've got Karen Read drives up in a limousine and gets out, and the cheers go up. Okay, just cheering a person who's on trial for killing someone. Let that sit for a minute. Now, here are all the people, and I'm there. They are with, a lot of it is women and old men. Okay, the 3 or 4 days I went there, and it was usually the same. Well, because people are off work, it was midweek. And wearing pink T-shirts. Free Karen Read. One of the things you said, framed, was cute. They had professionally made these T-shirts with a license plate frame on it, and inside it said framed. So Karen Read was framed. It was very cute. They had children, 3, 4, 5-year-old children with T-shirts holding signs. They had animals wearing T-shirts. It was a circus. It wasn't an opinion. It was not a debate. And I brought my microphone, and I was thinking I'm going to be knifed or something, but I'd go up to people and I try to be, is there any chance? No. See, they dragged the body. No. They all know the talking points. So it wasn't just an opinion. They had their data ready. And then it went farther. We had people wanting to impeach. I don't know if it was the mayor or the DA, or I don't know what the level of it was in the town, Dedham. They were in Canton. They wanted, so it went out beyond, that the prosecution is being evil. They then were blaming the dog catcher, the police chief or whatever, that had nothing to do with the trial. But I think when I saw children, but I'm telling you, when I first saw this, and there was no balance, and the big trucks were there with the dishes and the microwaves, with the camera and everything. I'm sorry, I could find no person that said she's guilty. Not one. At least there were maybe people there. No one with a sign that said "Wait for the law" or "Gee, I have a doubt." Everything was "Go Turtle Boy" and go. So that's what you missed on site. You might have seen it in clips and all that. I experienced it, and it was frightening.
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, that she definitely had. And again, I go back to the creation of this machine. So her defense team, and again, this is just Kay giving my opinion, what I believe happened. Alan Jackson is very savvy in how to use social media and how to create this machine to drive the crowd, to gin up, rile up the crowd, and to propel whatever the message is they're trying to propel into the public. And unfortunately, human beings, so many that walk among us, are so gullible. They will, well, if this person believes it, then it must be true. If this person that I admire or that I respect, or I've listened to them on another case, I've heard them speak on another case and they were right, they must know something I don't know. So I'm just going to let them do the thinking for me. And I'm just going to sign on to this because it looks safe. Okay. It's safe to be part of that majority. It's safe to be part of that mob. You're not really risking anything. Nobody's going to attack you if you join in, right? Remember the movie, The Mummy, where the zombies are marching and they're going Emotep, 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 and the guy that's running around with Brendan Fraser, he sees them coming and he just turns and joins them and goes Emotep. He pretends. That's what they do. That is analogous to what they do because they are afraid to question or go against, even though there might be some little niggle in their brain that is telling them that just doesn't, it's absurd. Okay. The whole framing scenario is likely absurd. It's like a soap opera. There's so many layers to it that would all have to just fit together just right. Okay. To not fall apart and collapse like a house of cards. It's safer to join that. Not only is it safer, it's more lucrative for anybody who wants to throw their hat in the ring and be somebody who's a content creator or turn a camera on and start talking, right? So if you know that the majority are all co-signed this, and again, I have to remind people, this is a created machine. This was not organic. These crowds were not, you don't have matching shirts and matching slogans if it's not created. It's an orchestrated thing that is
Right.
not organic. These people are co-signing this out there with the pom-poms and, like you said, with their children, their dogs, and joining it in. And it's kind of become now a party and it's a circus. We saw it in the Murdaugh. We saw it in the Murdaugh case too. I hate to say, it was shameful. The behavior in that was shameful. They were out there with cutouts and popcorn and hot dogs and what the hell? You're talking about people that have lost their life. Life is sacred. It is the most precious, all we have at the end of the day, right? You could lose your home, you could lose your fortune, but your life is all you have. When you lose your life, whether it is to go to prison or you're getting your head clobbered by a car and you're freezing to death on someone's lawn, you have lost the most sacred thing that you have. This is serious business. It's not a circus. It shouldn't be turned into a circus. It's a reverent thing. We should be approaching it with the reverence that it deserves. Nobody should be approaching it with a circus like, and if you'll see, I'm getting teary-eyed because I feel so bad for this man and for Paul and Maggie Murdaugh and JonBenet Ramsey. And I feel bad for these people that this is the footnote of the legacy of their life. The legacy left behind that people will remember most is this horrific, embarrassing circus that you went and personally witnessed. And it's, to the average normal person, it is obscene. It's an obscenity. And it shouldn't be happening, but it is. And it's going to continue to happen. And unless people make a willful change about how they approach these cases, unless they climb up and pull themselves out of the gutter.
Now, again, and not wishing to move it into the political, but I think that, it's without saying it's there, it's in our face, that the internet and YouTube and all the, and Facebook and all the rest of them is It's about everything. We're talking about a niche, and it's a dangerous niche, and that's our opinion, right? We're doing true crime niche. But it's the same thing, and I'm not picking on MAGA, but you feel safe in MAGA if you're a MAGA. And you feel, I call myself a liberal. I am a liberal. I feel righteous in my liberalness. So I'll go online and throw out a Trump meme or something. And I'm not saying that's wrong, but I try now, and it's harder with AI, even if it's from a friend I trust, but they're reposting.
Yes.
And so
I have
to sound in my head. It looks like it comes from the New York Times. Go check. And it comes back. No, it's all over the internet. It's bullshit. Just one more thing, then I'll let you jump back in. Talk about circus. One other thing I missed about going up there. Again, I'm wandering around for the first time, and there's groups. Oh, there's food trucks and everything there. Oh, I'm not kidding. Here's people like the parade. People got their chairs in the shade, which is great. They got big trucks with the truck size signs on them, and they have to have the streets closed to let them be there. And so again, it was a square, grassy square, and there's a bunch of people around something, and there's a big barrel, one of those road barrels that rock, and there's something, and they're all around it. And I'm at a distance, and I'm hearing them cheering, and then they're quiet, and then they cheer. They're listening on radio to the goings on in the court.
Right.
So they're all hunkered over this guy's FM radio. No. And it's obviously somebody got slapped down. The prosecutor got slapped down.
Right.
And you hear,
right.
I thought maybe they're listening to a ball game. So I asked someone on the periphery and said, "Oh no, it's the court." And they just told what's his name to go to hell.
Right.
And I went, "Oh, this is weirder than I thought."
Right. It's at the intersection of where the worst of humanity meets.
There you go.
The legal system. But in true crime cases, as I said, at the end of the day, typically you're dealing with the death, loss of a life, that sacred loss of life. And behind that loss of a life, you have the people who loved the person, the people who relied on the person, like the children that were relying on John O'Keefe, and you have the people that are directly affected. And my empathy for those people, I mean, you can never overstate that, because I've lost people. I'm sure you've lost people too.
Oh,
and by the grace of God, we did not have to deal with the loss of our loved one becoming a cult fixation.
Circus, a cult, whatever you want to call it.
Becoming a circus fixation. And for people to be saying our loved one's name so flippantly, and even all of these people have family who love them. Brian Higgins, Brian Albert, Julie Albert, Chris Albert, Colin is just a kid. And I have seen what the worst of the worst has done, especially to young people, because you and I are such an age. I'm 53. Okay. So we're of an age where I think we got a little bit harder, tougher skin.
Of course.
But kids today that are 18, 19, 20, like my kids' age, the opinion.
They're not hardened yet.
Nope. And if there's an opinion of you on social media that is negative, it is devastating. To their self-image. Yep. And it shapes and defines their self-image. And I have seen the damage of that. I have seen people end their lives over the bullying online.
Of course. Suicides are up, and on social media.
And it's especially hard on the young people. So that's why it makes it just so egregious that her team chose to focus on Colin Albert he is a young person. His image online that's going to impact him even more severely. And also it makes him a softer target, right? It makes him a softer, easier target. And so to see like the adults in the FKR movement and the things that they say about him, there just seems to be no reins on any of it. There seems to be no holds barred. There seems to be there's no decency. There's no civility. It's just say anything, accuse anything, and nobody cares. And the person on the other side of that, they read that and they see that, and it's just so extremely psychologically damaging. It's devastating. It's devastating. This will follow him around for the rest of his life. And it's just so unfair. I feel helpless in terms of how to reverse it or change it, or how to convince people to stop getting involved, because I think you have people that are sincerely good people who get sucked into the armies, whether it's be on one side or the other. You have people who are genuinely think they're doing what's right. And you have just, you have a whole host of people. You have some people that are doing it for money and clout and clicks and the endorphin rush of this. And then you have people that are doing it, just because they are not as sophisticated. They don't understand the evidence. They've been clouded, by the talking points. They're now a part of it. Okay, they've gotten their pink shirts and they've got their slogans down pat, and they've made a few friends, and they may have developed some fans, some small fans within their community. And now they're tethered to that, right? They've hitched their star to that wagon. So there's going to be no chance of like piercing through that with logic and critical thinking and reason. They're just going to, they're like, allergic to it. And they just will forcefully push it away and shove it away. And it's like talking to a brick wall, right? You can't reason with people who are unreasonable. And going back to politics, my daughter is a liberal and I'm a conservative, and I have liberal family members whom I love. Isn't that the way it's supposed to be? You're supposed to have friends that you love and you care, family members. Not everybody's going to see the same thing, but I was raised in such a way that you debate in a civil way, and you debate your talking points, because you never know what seed you might plant. They might think about later and go, well, I could look at this a different way. And there's nothing more beautiful within the realm of critical thinking than changing your mind, than saying, I maybe was wrong on that. Or when more information comes in saying, well, maybe I can adjust my thought process on that a little, or maybe I can look at that person through a different lens.
Let's fill the audience in, as you say, that we, again, just to quickly, the Cliff Notes, a mistrial, jury hung on the first, acquittal on the second. She's done, can't be retried. But now we have she's suing various people in the prosecution and police area for wrongful whatever. I don't know how far that'll go, but that's fine. She's going to do that. And the parents, I believe the parents of John O'Keefe are suing her for wrongful death. They started theirs a while ago. So now on her part, I don't want to assume what she's doing. But as I say, offense is the best defense. So I think if she can tie them up and get them all, tethered in more civil litigation, she might feel she can back them off a little bit. But I'm guessing they won't be backed off. And they're not going to get any money. Well, I don't know how much money she's got left from all her donations, but doesn't matter. They can put that on her that they find, if it happens that way, that the plaintiff has made their case and wrongful death. I mean, it happened, and it made some people feel good in O.J. Simpson, because whatever way you feel with it, with the case, they had no recourse. The family of Brown, Simpson, and Goldman. They had no recourse at that point. He was let go. So they went that route, and there was a satisfaction to that. So that's where it stands now. I think everything's kind of quiet. I don't know which case. Will they be almost simultaneous? I don't even know where they will be brought. Will it be Boston? Will it be wherever? Right. So, but there's a chance that over the summer or sometime, one case or the other, after they go through all their, negotiations and depositions, there'll be more trials, won't there?
Well, I would imagine so, and to avoid sort of reading the tea leaves too much, right?
Right.
I think we can already see the groundwork being laid in the wrongful death. And as you know, in the civil case, the preponderance of the evidence is less.
Yep.
But we see the groundwork being laid that they're once again, it's like it worked the first time, so we're going to try it again. We're going to try to blame, and they're narrowing in once again on this young, well, I call him a kid because I'm an old lady, and anybody who's under 25 is a kid because I have 20-year-old kids. So he's a kid. He has not had a chance to live his life. Okay. He's a kid for all intents and purposes, right? Karen Reed's my age or maybe slightly younger. She's an old woman too, right? Middle age. He's a kid to her too. They once again seem to be using that same playbook, and not to read the tea leaves too much. I just don't see how it's going to work, because her criminal trial, again, is that sort of looking glass that we can see what the tactics were and what she surrendered to. And I've kind of come full circle here. She surrendered to that data that puts her there, him there, her backing up, him stopping moving, that is unassailable, unflappable, hard forensic data. It's vehicle telematics that and the Collins data having him leaving at 12:15. This is stuff that she's not going to be able to smoke and mirrors her way around very easily. I don't know what her team has up their sleeve. I really don't know. And it is going to be interesting to watch. And there is the appearance right now that the judge is not playing the games, that the judge is going, nope, I'm not having this. And Colin has been given a bit of a breather. As people know, he's joined the Army. God bless him for his service. It's kind of a scary time to be joining the Army with what we've got going on with the uncertainty once again in the Middle East. But, God bless this young man. We need more young men like him who are willing to do that and willing to serve. So thank God for him. And he's been given a little bit of a breather room in terms of, and he's offered up this data, which is, he's offered up this phone data, which is really brave considering what she's done to other people whose data has been gotten. I mean, if we look at what's happened to other people, they've been just obliterated and humiliated online because
just so I understand, didn't you tell me that he was picked up? Oh, forget the phone data. Wasn't he picked up by a friend or a family
cousin.
member?
Yeah, his cousin. And
but it was picked up. Did the person verify that it was 12:20 or something? Well, then how is he even considered as a killer? As the one who beat him up.
You know what? It's always been a mystery to me. And another thing I wanted to point out, and I'm scrolling trying to find it. The framing, and we can get into this at another time. I want you to go have your dinner and have a good time. So we could do a part 2 if you want to get into the frame job.
Yeah. We'll do that.
The framing, their claims of framing involve planting of evidence. Okay, which the timeline is very specific there in terms of Karen's SUV was picked up from her parents' home and brought to the Sallyport at 5:36 in the evening. Okay. The first piece of taillight found in the debris field was found at 5:45. So there's no time for taillight to be planted but yet they still got away with that in the criminal trial. And you will still see people on the FKR side who are just fundamentally incapable of understanding that the evidence itself makes that physically not only is it absurd to think it was done, it's just silly. It's the evidence makes it physically impossible, and they don't. And then you have Karen. There was a wellness check at 8:30, and her car is right there in the driveway, and the taillight is very obviously damaged. Right?
There was damage from the right.
It's so this concept that all of this evidence was that they reverse engineered. That all of these cops and all these ancillary law enforcement professionals reverse engineered all of the evidence to frame her to hit him that is an extraordinary claim. To frame someone by being hit by a vehicle. That's an
Right.
extraordinary claim. Versus there was a fight, there was tensions, there were tempers, and something happened. We don't know exactly what movement by movement, angle by angle, moment, minute by second.
We don't have CCTV. We have no
we don't
CCTV.
have that. Yeah, we unfortunately don't have that in this case. Oh, Sharilla, that's the name I was. Okay, so in the Sharilla case, we had a video of her car, like a bullet shoot. Okay, and that lined up with her vehicle's telematics.
But we don't have that. No doorbell cameras on the road to pick that up.
Karen got very lucky that none of that.
She sure did, because everyone's got them now.
Lucky.
I don't, but.
She had some sort of, I don't know, was on her side there, but she got so lucky that was not captured by eyeballs or video. But whatever it was happened very rapidly. It was a very quick minutes. It was just minutes, seconds, moments, and it was done. Boom, 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 done. And what people do is then they fill in the gaps. What they don't know happened, they fill in the gaps and they make stuff up and they just evidence. They're just, an evidence is anathema to them. It doesn't matter. Don't tell me the evidence. Don't confuse me with it because this is what I think happened. And so these are the people that these are the people on that side. And it's, people have referred to it as a cult. I don't know if I want to refer to it as a cult because that kind of takes away from the seriousness of cults. But the same tactics used in engineering cults very same tactics were used to engineer this FKR machine with the express purpose of getting her off. And I will say, if she didn't mean to hit him, I'm going to quickly say what I believe happened. I think he threw the glass. It broke the taillight. I think he immediately felt bad. She was slowly pulling away. I think he walked over to where the heavy base was, the heavy base of the glass. And I think he was in the process of picking it up when she reversed. And I think she walloped him in the head. It's also possible that he picked it up and he was just standing and he was grazed by the broken taillight and he was pushed back and hit his head on the fire hydrant or the ground. That's also a competing theory I have. Either one of those explain the lack of serious soft tissue damage, ligament, tendon damage anywhere else in his body. The main injury was the head, was that head injury. His head was hit very, very, very hard. His brain bounced inside inside the skull. Yep. Inside the skull. I mean, that takes a lot of force. That's not just a punch. No, that's getting hit really hard.
I've got a pretty hard head. Okay, I got a pretty hard head.
We have hard heads. We do. Our heads are hard. We're perfectly designed, right, for our own safety. And
the things that you talk about the evidence again. That is, the people sat through the trial. They were a jury, and if they took their oath seriously. So they were hearing competing things, and then there were closing statements. So someone could say, "Oh, it was Colin," and then the defense or the prosecutor is going to say, "Well, he wasn't there. We have all this evidence that proved he, was picked up and went home." And then the next thing, and then the next thing. But the people listening from the outside don't have that, and the problem is, it's like someone once said that everyone sees in the newspaper or online an article or a story. They don't see the retraction.
Yes, exactly.
When there's a retraction, seems no one sees it because it's weeks away or days away or it's not on my feed anymore. And so someone will say, "Oh, no, he really, what's his notes didn't really say that."
Right.
And you could say, look, you can look up the retraction to go, "Nah, I'm not going to bother." So they are going to stick with that original story no one is denying that it's debunked. It wasn't on purpose. It was an accident. No, there wasn't an earthquake in Maine. It was Venezuela. Someone typed there was this huge and thousands of people are dead. I saw it on no, it was on its way. All right, gotta go. Ladies and gentlemen, I will be back to our friend here, Kay Marie, for another wonderful episode of other things we want to talk about. And there are so many things. She's covered cases outside of this one, but we really did want to focus on the phenomenon of these warriors. And
Yeah, the
so
War of the Worlds.
there
The
you
War
go.
of the Two
So
Worlds.
I will be back to you again soon. So
All
thank you,
right.
Kate.
Thank you so much, James. Talk to you next time.
So I'd like to thank you folks for kindly tuning in for another episode of Murder Most Foul. If you liked what you heard, I hope you'll tell your friends. Information about the podcast and an email link that can get a message to me can be found at the podcast's website. The address being www.murdermostfoul, all one word, no caps, no spaces.com. So until we meet again, stay safe, and for God's sakes, don't murder anyone.